I grew up in an environment where I feel like people really didn't want me to win. I don't know, I always just felt like I'm gonna take their doubt and use it as my fuel. And I've always operated like that.
Welcome to Maker's Mindset. I'm your host, Nancy Twine. In this episode, I'm in conversation with Hannah Bronfman, an angel investor, entrepreneur, activist, and a beauty and health expert. She's credited with bringing wellness to the forefront of the digital age. She's a vocal advocate for women's reproductive rights and is passionate about solutions for preventable maternal mortality. Hannah is also the dynamic founder of Pres10 Ventures, an angel investment platform where she's invested in over 60 companies, the majority of which are BIPOC or female founded. As an angel investor, Hannah specializes in digital health and better for you, better for the planet consumer products. Let's go ahead and jump in. So welcome, Hannah. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you today. I feel like the last time that we had a real one-to-one, it was like a few years ago, and you were interviewing me for your YouTube channel. And I just feel like so much has changed since then. You've been building such an amazing audience on social as a, beauty and wellness expert and an activist. And I feel like as of late, you've been a lot more vocal about the work that you've been doing behind the scenes to support underrepresented founders. And it's something that we both have in common. We're both investors in amazing companies like Julie and Topicals. So I want to talk more about it. But first, can you educate on what angel investing is and what inspired you to start your angel investing platform, Pres10 Ventures?
First of all, it's so funny that we are in this position now,
Right?
like roles are reversed. And, I started angel investing about 7 years ago. It stemmed from my own experience as a founder. I started a startup back in 2013. It was really like the hotel tonight for the beauty industry. There were so many learnings there. And I started mentoring and advising founders, and then really started to commit actual capital in 2017. And I've been so lucky to be a part of so many different companies and founders' journeys, and I've learned so much along the way, and also like very educated now in this arena, whereas before I was definitely just starting out and wanting to understand founders and founder stories and how people were building their businesses in different verticals. And I was kind of at the forefront of commerce and content, even with my own personal platform, HBFit, which was really at the intersection of content and commerce. And there's just been so many learnings in the last, 7 years. And now I have a portfolio of about 60 companies, which are all in the Pres10 portfolio. And it's actually really interesting how it's all very much prepared me to take this next step in my career, to really institutionalize what I had been doing as an angel, and create a new fund called Contour Capital.
Yeah, talk to me more about that. And what does that mean? What does it mean to shift from an angel investment platform to an actual venture fund?
Sure. So as an angel, typically coming into companies at different stages, but I liked to come in as early as possible, at that pre-seed and seed round, friends and family. Some of those companies were, pre-launch, pre-revenue. But at Contour, we'll be really focused on companies that are doing between 5 and 20 million in revenue. Okay. We really want to see product market fit. We want to see that the company can grow, profitable and has potential to go up to, 80 million in revenue plus. So, we're definitely focused at Contour at that kind of Series A level, whereas before I was kind of coming in earlier, and also, writing angel-sized checks. So writing much smaller checks. And now at Contour, we'll really focus on writing checks between $2 and $6 million. We've really identified that is a big white space in the landscape of venture capital. There's so many pre-seed and seed firms, and there are a lot of growth firms, but there's really not a lot of firms that are focused on this I like to call it early growth. It's a pivotal point in a lot of companies who are either looking to expand into more doors and distribution, looking for more distribution, looking to really like optimize the margins and reach new consumers, right? Because it's really growth mode. But we still need to get those companies to an attractive revenue so that they are ready for a potential exit. Life cycle for a venture firm is typically like 7 to 10 years, right? Okay, yeah. I started angel investing about 7 years ago. So I've been with a lot of companies through their Series A, and I've seen a lot of how, the inner workings of those financing rounds go. And so I feel that all of the experience and data that I have really prepared me to institutionalize and move forward in this way.
So exciting. And in the investor community, there's this phrase that says, bet the jockey, not the horse. Because the truth is, so much of what makes a company really successful, it's not just the product, but it's really the founder and the team that make the magic. So what key qualities do you look for in founders before you decide to invest?
Founders who have like true conviction, who have discipline, who take constructive feedback, who can really also see the exit opportunity. Sometimes I feel like a lot of founders maybe start their business without thinking about what the exit looks like. But I think it's really important to have an idea of where you're going before you start. And that doesn't mean that you have to stay on that path. There are going to be so many moments where, one door closes and you have to pivot and go in a different direction, but you can still know where you're trying to end up. I often think that it's really important to try and think about where I want to be in 5 or 7 years and kind of reverse engineer that. Exactly. So that I think is also really important for founders as well. I think it's also important for founders not to feel too precious about their business, because sometimes I feel like that can get in the way of like making really important decisions.
Right. And I think it comes down to alignment, because at the end of the day, when you partner with an investor, it's not just like free money. The alignment comes from the fact that like, hey, we want to grow this company and there's got to be some sort of exit at some point. So I think it has to be very clear and aligned between the founder and an investor that we're working towards this goal over time.
100%. And I think a lot of times mistakes that startups make are wanting to go with investors who give them the biggest valuation, but sometimes that creates that misalignment that you're talking about.
Right, and it can create a lot of pressure too, because if you come in with this crazy valuation, now you've got to hit and exceed that for it to be valuable to the investor. And sometimes it can cause you to make decisions about the business that aren't in the best interest of the company, but it's so you can hit some, crazy number basically. Yeah, totally. So what sort of advice would you give to entrepreneurs who want to pitch someone like you? And what do you think entrepreneurs can do to enhance their chances of success with fundraising?
That's a great question. I mean, I think obviously like you want to have like a great TAM. You want to make sure that you're, hitting like a total addressable market, and that like there's a lot of power in having a niche brand and company and ethos, but being niche doesn't mean that you won't have mass success. I think like, coming at it with a niche POV is interesting, but I think at the end of the day, like you really want to make sure that your company is going to be hitting a large group of consumers and that it's a need, not a want.
One of the things that we talked actually about earlier today is the fact that you don't necessarily need to come from the industry in which you're launching your business. Right. And in a lot of ways, sometimes investors prefer that you don't, because sometimes if you feel like you have all the answers and you have this playbook from your, previous career, that's not really how you innovate and think outside of the box. Right. And so that's just one piece of advice that I would give to founders. Sometimes that could actually be your superpower. Right?
100%. And having a different POV than the rest of your industry or your vertical is definitely a huge upside.
Completely. And obviously, as an investor, you're taking on some risk for potential upside of reward, right? How do you balance this, and what sort of strategies do you think about to help manage the risks that comes with being an investor?
Inevitably, as an angel investor and investing in companies, that's a lot of risk. You're definitely gonna have losses, right? I think at the end of the day, you have to understand that sometimes like you're gonna put $25,000 into something and you're not gonna see that money back. And if you're okay with that, right? Then okay, like take your bet.
And you've placed a lot of bets. It's not like you've placed 3 bets. I mean, you've placed 60 bets over time.
Yeah.
So there's an element of diversification
Absolutely.
also.
It's interesting when I was first kind of investing in the beauty industry, like a lot of people would be like, oh, well, I invested in that company and so it's a little similar to the other company. I don't want to invest. And I always kind of thought, if there's a category I really like, I want to double down in that category. And while I think there are similarities to some companies, they're really going after different audiences and they're going at it very differently. And I've never been someone who's like, taking a playbook and telling someone over there, but, there are things that are just readily accessible to the audience, whether it's the way you're marketing or being privy to the next wave of superfood ingredients or things like that, that I think, multiple companies can play off of. And so like I've made a few different investments in the beauty space, right? Whether it's Ame Collet and Live Tinted, or in the hair care space like Sienna Naturals and Ceremonia. Some angels would like not do that, but in my case, like I want to spend my time in this industry, and so I want to diversify. One company's at Target, one's at Sephora, one's at Ulta. Like for me, like getting to know all of these big retailers in different capacities has also been like amazing for me as an angel to then, develop those relationships with those retailers.
Completely. So I want to pivot for a moment to talk about your experience as an entrepreneur. And I think that one of the things that makes you really unique as an investor is that you actually know what it's like to run a company. And a lot of investors don't. So you were running a company, HBFit, which was a platform that helped people integrate wellness into their daily lives. And after operating the business for years, you decided to shut down HBFit. So can you walk us through what HBFit was at its peak, the business model, and what led you to close the company?
Sure. So HBFit really started out as like a hashtag. It literally was just something I was using to storytell and share on the internet, on Instagram. And then I realized that people were really gravitating towards that. So in the early days, I started to make like a .com, and it really was honestly a blog. It was like the place where I was putting out content that was very much how you can integrate wellness into your everyday life, trends that I was seeing, etc. And then as I kind of decided to move through that landscape and I was seeing like, interesting things that were going on, whether it was like Into the Gloss, launching Glossier, and Into the Gloss becoming like a content-enabled commerce, right? I was like, oh, okay, that seems really, really interesting. And how can we convert these eyeballs into purchases? So at its peak, HBFit really turned into a marketplace. But at the end of the day, it was never a venture-backed company. I never really focused enough of my efforts in growing the business. So I never hired a CFO. I didn't hire content people specifically for the company. It was really like an extension of my personal brand. And it was honestly more of a branding exercise than anything else. And while I wish that I had kind of taken it more seriously, at the same time, like at the end of the day, I didn't want to be running that company. And I saw a much larger opportunity in helping others run their company. So I decided in the spring of 2023 to shut the business down, have a baby. I was 9 months pregnant when I shut the company down, and really kind of focus on this next chapter of my career, which is, venture capital.
So I'm curious to know, how has your entrepreneurial experience shaped your philosophy as an investor? So based upon what you went through with building your own company, realizing where the holes were, how do you take that and how does that shape your lens as an investor? Because one of the things that you had mentioned earlier today when I was, moderating our other event was that one of your superpowers is just your ability to like connect and understand founders, and the fact that having a relationship with an investor doesn't have to be like this scary thing, right?
Totally. I definitely have really leaned into like the human capital of it all and really been like a human, like more than just an investor for my founders, which has really
And that's what people want.
Yes, totally. And founders are going to go through challenges that will really like, make or break them personally, which ends up trickling over to the business. Because when founders are burnt out, they don't make great decisions. But I was also going to say some of the learnings really, I've had some companies go to zero in my portfolio. And I think that data sometimes is way more valuable than the things that have, been a major success. And so for me, being able to like really dive in and have case studies and understand those playbooks, that to me is really valuable as an investor to bring along with me on this journey and say, hey, that actually didn't work for this company over here. What are the lessons and how can we dissect that and then bring it into a playbook that might be very successful for us, right?
And that's the key, because not every, investment's going to be a home run, but it's like, what are those nuggets of like wisdom and learning that you can take to apply to the next ones? Like that's how you build.
Totally. And I was even listening to the founder of Sweetgreen, Jonathan, talk last week about they had these growth metrics and they would reach a certain level and then they would need to like redo the whole thing because that way of doing it only got them to there. They couldn't continue doing it that way to get them to the next milestone. And so I think that was also a really like important thing to say because it's true. Your levels of growth and success are going to like, it's one thing to get to 5 million in revenue. It's another thing to get to 20 million in revenue. And it's another thing to get to 50 million in revenue, right? It takes different operations to get to each one of those levels. And I think a lot of people think that they're going to be with their founding team for forever. Yeah. But I think actually there's a lot of opportunity in kind of switching that out sometimes.
Exactly.
But, founders want to be loyal to their people. But I think there's also a way of incentivizing people who obviously have given so much tremendous success and who were a part of the early days upside still, even if they're not in the day-to-day role.
Completely. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the Hannah Bronfman brand, because building a strong, credible brand is so important in business, whether you're looking to bring on investors or you're trying to convince a founder why you should be on their cap table. And your brand is so dynamic. I mean, it spans wellness, entrepreneurship, investing, all of it. How have you strategically built your personal brand, and how has doing so supported your different ventures?
Quite literally, in the early days, I did not understand what living my life on the internet was really going to do or prepare me for or put me in these rooms that I have now been in, and I'm like, oh wow. But I came up in the early days of the internet, of social media rather. But then I also, was a DJ, or as we're like to say now, working in corporate entertainment. But all of those gigs really were a door into a marketing department. And that really kind of allowed me to grow my deep industry network. And once I realized that there was a very sticky audience for the things that I was talking about, I quickly kind of became an authority in the space. And once that started happening, I started to understand, okay, this is a business. And I'm now being asked to speak on panels or show up to Cannes Lion, or, I'm being approached about a wellness book. I'm like, okay, wow, like this is really like taken off in a way that I didn't necessarily see. But then once it started to come together, I very quickly realized that the world is quite literally my oyster, and the things that I am really passionate about, other people are passionate about it too, and that I have this opportunity to really take advantage of these tools that are allowing me to get in front of so many people and how to do that. So then I really kind of thought about, all right, how do I want to show up and where do I want to show up and where do I want to be in 15 years, right? And so for me, I've always wanted to open doors for other people, create opportunities for more women of color, whether that's in the DJ space, the wellness space, the investment space, the advocacy space. I kind of also want to be a household name. You know, I always used to joke as a kid that I was going to be the Black Betty Crocker. And
I love that.
in a lot of ways, I fulfilled a lot of that. You know, I had an early show on Snapchat with the Food Network. I've now work in CPG and have many brands that are in Whole Foods, but, you know, or Target or whatever, but, you know, I'm not necessarily the face of those brands. And while I really do enjoy being on the, you know, behind the scenes with brands, there is this element that I do feel very comfortable kind of in front of the camera. So we'll see if I ever get to like my own CPG moment. But I'm really loving the fact that I have my hands in so many different verticals. And I think part of my success was really timing. My voice and my POV was really missing from a conversation. And at the same time that Instagram really came out, that allowed me the platform. It's been really interesting forging my own path and not always knowing exactly where it's going to shake out. You know, I had thought about this 3 years ago and I was like, I don't know if that's really going to be my thing. And then I'm like, no, this is totally my thing. I tried to talk myself out of it for too long and here we are, so.
Totally. And I guess when it comes to entrepreneurs or executives, why do you think it's important for people like that to invest in building their personal brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live in a time where, you know, we all, as consumers as well as operators, really look to corporate leadership. And, you know, there are people who are standout in what they do and what they've built and how they contribute to a company. I think it's really important that those people give back to the entrepreneurial community because it's just obviously really important that other people learn how to build companies, right? Like, you never know who's going to have the next $1 billion idea. And if there's someone living in poverty or if there's someone who's been very privileged growing up, like I was recently listening to the podcast Acquired on the Hermes brand. They called out this stat, which I did not know, but the founder of Hermes and the founder of Louis Vuitton were both orphans. Literally, they created luxury and created lasting brands for hundreds of years, right? And so it just goes to show that like people with conviction, who are visionaries, who can see something bigger than what might be happening right now, you gotta foster that. And sometimes you need those words of encouragement from people in corporate leadership who have done it, you know, to help you see where you're going, to be motivated, to be inspired.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer. I love what you said because seeing is believing. And for so many years with Briogeo, I was so heads down. I would say no to certain interviews. And I was like, you know what? I've got to make myself more present.
Absolutely.
Because the more people who look like me, seeing me doing the things that they want to do, that becomes a proof point. And sometimes seeing that proof point is what unlocks the confidence for people to take that next step.
And you also like have contributed and single-handedly moved an entire industry that is inspiring a whole new generation of potential operators and entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. You know, I spoke about this actually earlier today. You know, I've seen you in rooms before, and one of the things that I really love about you is just your confidence and just your comfortability with going up to people that you don't know and just start engaging with them. Like, I know you even said you'll just like slide in someone's DMs, right? Like if that's what it takes. So can you talk more about your approach to building and maintaining your network? Like, how do you do that?
It's so funny. I have these like vivid memories of like when my parents would entertain at our house growing up, and my mom would always make me be the Coke girl or like help with, our caterer and like ask what people wanted to drink or, so I was always being like kind of pushed to do like to approach people in ways, and so
Probably some really important people that you didn't even know.
Totally. So I feel like I am pretty comfortable, like you said, like just going up to people. I think there's so much value in really trying to be present. And I feel like when I am really present, I am giving whoever I'm communicating with like 100% of my attention. So therefore, it's like, of course we're gonna stay in touch, like give me your number, we're gonna text, we'll email, and I have this way of bringing people into my orbit and making them feel really important. And I like to feel that way when I'm talking to someone too. And I think, in a time when everyone's so busy, networking, all the things, people can also be dismissive. And I don't want to feel that way when I'm talking to people. Right. So for me, I really just try to engage with people in a way that makes them feel good and want to continue our conversation. Like someone said, you never know what your investor is going to look like or who's going to be a champion of yours or what this person does. Like, I think it's important to bring yourself wholeheartedly to a conversation. And it's really hard to do that sometimes. I'm really good at compartmentalizing. That's a skill I've had to like learn how to do, but I think it pays off in spades.
And then what about, you meet all these people in all these different places, and I find sometimes the hard part is like actually staying in touch and building upon that relationship. So one of the things that I try to do too is like if I get invited to an event and I have a +1, I try to think like, who's a good person to take to this event? We haven't talked in a while. It's like a great way for us to reconnect. Do you have any other little hacks or
That's a really good one.
Things like that?
For instance, I'll try and like maybe host something, maybe like twice a year or something like that, just so that I have an excuse to get everyone together. Or if I know like someone's coming to town or, you and I see each other like when we're on the circuit, right? There's certain events that we know that we're gonna be seeing each other at. Like, I look forward to some of those moments, and because I work across multiple different industries, like I kind of know where people are going to be showing up. So I always like try to like reach out, or if I know that there's like a big dinner, maybe I'll try and find out who's invited before I show up, so I can either bring a +1 that I think is going to be, a great addition, maybe someone I haven't seen, or if I know that someone's going to be there, I'm like, oh, can I actually sit at their table because it's been so long and I really want to catch up with them or things like that. But it is hard. And I have to say, like, living in New York, it's kind of easier to like be in cahoots with everyone. Because New York is such a social place and people are going out to dinner all the time, and I feel like it's very different in LA.
It's more spread out.
Yeah, it's more spread out, and it has to be like very curated and like so there's more opportunity for like just bumping into people, I think, also in New York.
Well, with all the networking, the travel, the events, I'm sure you really appreciate downtime, especially as a mom of 2 really cute kids. I'm sure there's just a lot, right?
Yeah.
And wellness is obviously a big part of how you center and ground yourself. Can you share some of your personal wellness practices that have just been transformative for you?
Yeah, it's funny, like before kids, these like such different rituals, right? Now having kids, I will say, like, at night, when the kids are asleep, like having a glass of wine, getting in my bathtub, like just like lighting a candle and making the vibes right makes me feel so good and really allows me to like take a minute and like think about everything I've done and then like appreciate that and then like lean into the stillness. You know what I mean? Because our lives are hectic, everything's moving constantly, and like it's really important to like have that stillness for my brain. Another like transformative thing for me is like especially getting to spend time with my kids in a way that's like fun and present, but I also like to be active. So, I'll pop my almost 1-year-old into the stroller. I'll go for a walk with her. Maybe I'll also be doing like a couple of little workout movements while I'm walking with the stroller, and I'm like chatting with her, whether I'm playing music and she's awake, or maybe she's having a nap, or whatever it is. Like, I feel like those moments where I'm just like, you know, one-on-one with my kids is also really important, but also like in nature, I think is also a big one. Like, we'll try and go out to our house in Long Island, just to like be amongst grass and trees.
Yeah.
Because the city can totally get, you know, it's a concrete jungle out there.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
But those two things, like having alone time, stillness, you know, whether it's a nice long bath or even just like a nice long shower, those, like, that to me is like very calming and really like rejuvenating. And then spending time with my family, and even getting one-on-one time with my husband, getting one-on-one time with my kids. Like, for my husband and I, like, we have a date night once a week. And like, that's a non-negotiable. Yeah, it's really, really important, because life is hectic and it can get busy, and having toddlers are crazy. And, you know, if our foundation isn't, you know, super strong, then everything starts to fall apart.
Completely. And I love what you said too about, in those moments of stillness, you take some time to reflect on the things that did go well, and to have just a little moment of celebration, because it's so easy to like be on to the next thing, right? You're like always chasing something.
Or even to like harp on the random negative thing that happened, right?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
It's really important to like, you know, I was saying this earlier this week, but like, we got to get the imposter syndrome out, right? And everyone deals with it.
How does it show up for you?
You know, it's so funny. I feel like I'm, you know, moving into this different industry now. Although I've been kind of in this industry for a while, but now I'm showing up in a bit of a different capacity. And, you know, my peers are now people who have been doing this for, you know, 20 plus years, where, you know, I don't necessarily have all of that experience, or I didn't come from a traditional shop, or I didn't come from a big bank. And, you know, sometimes I'm like, well, you know, they know numbers so well, and I, you know, that's not my strength. And it's like, it's fine. Like,
I love though that you've gotten to that point, because that is something where so many people will get into their head about that, to the point where they can't be confident in rooms and go up to people, or, you know, do a Q&A in front of a bunch of potential LPs. And I think what you just said is so important, because it is possible to quieten that voice.
Yes.
And when you do, like, look at what can happen.
Totally.
Right?
And I've had to learn how to quiet the voice. Even in my early days in my career as a DJ, like, sometimes you walk into a room and I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm about to open for YG, like, you know, like, you know, or like Sierra, or, you know, whoever. And you're like, what am I doing here? And you're like, actually, no, I've done this before. They hired me because I'm actually really good at it. I've got good music taste, and I'm just gonna show up and do my thing. So in a lot of ways, being a DJ really did prepare me to be an institutional investor, because I've had to show up and be authentically myself. And at the end of the day, that's what makes me a good investor, right? Is being authentically myself. So,
well, thanks for humanizing that, because I feel like so many people probably see people like you, or even me, and they see the confidence and they're like, oh wow, they for some reason have something that I don't. And that's not necessarily the case. It's just that we figured out a way to still believe in ourselves and build confidence, even though we're venturing into something new.
Totally. I have always said, and I feel like my mom kind of put this in my orbit, but confidence is your best accessory. Like, don't forget it, you know?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And so the title of this podcast is obviously Maker's Mindset, and it's really rooted in this belief that so much of success is not just about having a great product or a business plan or a vision, but it's really cultivating a mindset that fuels resilience and the ability to keep pushing through all the obstacles. What does mindset mean for you, and how has that gotten you to where you are today?
Totally. I feel like this question takes me back to like my upbringing and like my, you know, kind of my life as a teenager, because I grew up in an environment where I feel like people really didn't want me to win. And
why do you think that was?
I think it's a whole host of reasons. But I don't know. I always just felt like I'm going to take their doubt and use it as my fuel. And I've always operated like that. So for someone who's also decided to live my life on the internet, people don't want you to win, and people, will have negative things to say.
And you think that's just human nature? Yeah. It's just kind of like jealousy or whatever?
Whatever it is, and it's always been my fuel to my fire. And it's like, I get that it's a hard fundraising environment. Like, I get it. Yeah. I don't really care. Like, I'm still gonna do it. So more no's, okay, cool. Like, I will show you. And I kind of like also try to visualize. Like, I know that I'm gonna be able to do this. No one said it was gonna be easy. But easy isn't that fun.
And it can't be easy, because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, and then it wouldn't be special anymore, right?
Exactly. So for me, my mindset has always been about, it's not only proving other people wrong, but it's really surprising myself.
I mean, that is your superpower, Hannah. I mean, that is literally it. Like, if you can go through life with that kind of mindset, you truly can do anything. So I love that so much. So we are coming to the end of our conversation, which is crazy because I feel like I could just keep talking to you for like another 2 hours. But we're gonna pivot into one of my favorite parts, which is 5 Fire Facts, which is a rapid fire interview that just gives our audience a candid glimpse into some of your personal hacks and experiences and all that good stuff.
Okay, I'm scared with the quick fire. I'm not good with quick answers.
That's okay, that's okay. All right, your favorite wellness trend right now?
Definitely the overnight sheet mask.
Oh, so leaving the sheet mask on overnight.
There's only a couple that are on the market that are actually designed to be worn for like between 4 and 8 hours. I tried this mask on an overnight flight, and I literally went to a meeting right off the plane, and my skin looked amazing.
Wow.
So I'm on that.
Okay, I gotta try that. Favorite recipe to cook at home?
I would probably say like Moroccan chicken stew.
Go-to workout class or routine?
I'm gonna say Soto.
Okay, I knew you were gonna say Soto. It's so good. Shout out to Hillary.
Shout out to Hillary, also ex-Goldman girl.
Yes.
I really loved her method, and to me, it's like I can do it anywhere. I don't need any equipment. I feel energized, and I feel like it's a real full body workout.
Lifestyle change you've made this year?
When I wake up, I do not look at my cell phone for at least an hour.
Quickest mood booster?
Honestly, I would say breathing.
Well, this was so much fun, Hannah.
That was it?
Thank you so much for being here today.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
This was great.
To stay connected with Hannah, the Maker's Mindset community, and me, check out all the details in the episode description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this series, leave a review, and share this episode with your community. Thanks so much for tuning in.